All the animals around the area. About 2 hours ago, I dropped my big Great Dane off, Jake, with some loving, caring family members who are going to watch him throughout the duration. A lot of people are actually surrendering animals. The Humane Society of the Treasure Coast is taking in hundreds of animals right now. It's a very dire situation because a lot of the shelters around are becoming overcrowded and filled. They're having problems staffing with those issues as well. Sam Smink is live in West Palm Beach right now talking with Animal Care and Control. Sam, how's the situation there?
Jay, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but they're actually getting calls now of dogs being chained to trees and even cars. I'm joined by the director of the Animal Care and Control, Diane. Diane, tell us more about this.
Well, it's really concerning. We're getting a lot of calls into our communications section at Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control that residents have evacuated. Neighbors are calling us and saying, my neighbors have evacuated, and there are dogs chained to trees, chained to parked cars. So this is just really devastating for us. We're already stretched thin, but we are sending people out, sending our officers out to try to do what we can for these dogs, and we will be removing them.
It's illegal, right?
It's absolutely illegal. Palm Beach County has a tethering ordinance which prohibits chaining or tethering of any dog outdoors at any time unless you're physically present with that dog. So when you're doing this in the face of such a devastating storm, this is absolutely felony animal cruelty. It's deliberate, it's intentional, and we will prosecute people for this. So residents need to be reminded there is no excuse for this. We have a pet-friendly shelter. Pets, humans, they're welcome there. It's in Boynton, at the West Boynton Gymnasium. There's just absolutely no excuse to do such an atrocity as chaining a defenseless animal outside with a storm of this magnitude coming.
Absolutely. We were sitting here in unbelief about this. And another situation you've been seeing is that, for example, there were 42 animals that were surrendered to your shelter yesterday, and you expect more today. So what can we do to help with that?
Well, we need people to understand that they really need to take their pet with them. We don't want any pets left behind during a storm, but you know, slow down and think about this a little bit, because if you are looking at your animal or your dog or your cat as something that's just replaceable, you know, we're not going to turn you away, but you certainly are going to go on a do not adopt list at all of our shelters, including private shelters, because I know that there are always extenuating circumstances, but to just say, I'm leaving, I don't want to take my pet with me, it's just an excuse that we aren't going to be very tolerant of. We're going to take that pet because we'd much rather have it at our facility than find it tied up in our parking lot after the storm has passed. But people need to slow down and think this through, and you know, and ask yourself, is this part of my family? If it's not part of your family, then maybe you shouldn't have pets.
And I was at Animal Care and Control earlier today, and one of your captains was saying that during a hurricane, usually a county shelter serves as the place where if animals are displaced after the storm, you take them in, so you need to make room.
Right. Animal Care and Control in Palm Beach County is the lead agency for all animal issues. That means that our shelter must be freed up to take in all displaced animals. We don't allow agencies to come in and just start taking animals in a random fashion. The goal is to empty our shelter so that all those animals that are displaced stay in our area. We do not allow animals to be moved outside of our county unless it's the animals, the dogs and cats that have already been in our adoption program. Those are the ones that need to be moved out right now to make room for that impending and absolute certain deluge of displaced animals that are coming in.
So for you at home watching this, you may be wondering what you can do. They have more than 100 animals ready to be adopted or fostered. They're looking for any animal rescue groups or private shelters that can come in and get these animals out. Also, if you are in the county, you are allowed to foster. You do not have to be pre-approved. And if you want to adopt, they are waiving the adoption fee. We'll have much more of this information on our website. For now, reporting live, Sam Smink, WPTV News Channel 5.
Sam, thank you very much. Heartbreaking to think what people are doing right now. I know I spoke with officials with the Humane Society of the Treasure Coast. They're seeing such an influx, as I mentioned, of hundreds of animals. And the problem here is that they have assigned crew, assigned staff members riding out the storm with the numbers that they thought they were going to get.
Exactly.
Now they have all of these extra animals as well as animal care and control. And it's so hard on the staff right now. So it becomes a major problem. Then you have people who are chaining their animals up outside. Officials are having to go get those animals. It's a problem. It's an absolute problem. There's another equation here that you can talk about, whether Diane so eloquently said that perhaps they shouldn't be pet owners if this is the problem. We can have a whole other day of discussion with that. But nonetheless, the situation at hand right now, if you can help, if you can do anything, contact Animal Care and Control, the Humane Society, just any help they can get. And
with
again, with fostering,
or
adopting right now, there's a small window again that we have right now.
We're going to take a quick break. We're touching base with our weather team, the all-important News Channel 5 Storm Team 5 team, coming up right after the break. Throughout the day, we've been monitoring all things Irma for you. Nuggets of information are coming in from different agencies and counties as decisions are made throughout the day. Our Tanya Rogers is in the newsroom monitoring some information that's just come in from Disney, actually. Tanya?
That's right, the happiest place on earth. Now, with Irma just bearing down on us, Disney World has decided that they are going to close their theme park. That's going to be on Sunday, September 10th and Monday, September 11th. Now, this does include Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. I know we've heard many friends who were heading to that or have gone in the past and love it, but that has been canceled. At the same time, I also want to mention that Universal Studios has Rock the Universe. That has been canceled over the weekend. That is where Christian singers come in and put on a great big concert, but that has been canceled as well. But don't forget, Disney closed on Sunday, September 10th, and also on Monday, September 11th. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Tanya, a lot of closings, a lot of things we'll be updating you throughout the next several days on, pretty much for the next week, depending upon how this storm ends up and the aftermath of the storm. Mandatory evacuations began today for a lot of residents in our area. Almost nearly 250,000 people are being evacuated throughout Palm Beach County, up on the Treasure Coast as well. News Channel 5's Alyssa Hyman on South Hutchinson Island right now, where they're preparing for the arrival of Hurricane Irma. Alyssa.
Well, that's exactly right here on South Hutchinson Island in St. Lucie County. This plaza right here should give you an idea of just how empty the area is, which is a good thing because, as you mentioned, those mandatory evacuations for this area just went into effect this afternoon around 3 o'clock this afternoon. This Cumberland Farms completely boarded up, and then take a look at the gas pumps completely saran wrapped because there just simply isn't any more gas. And then take a look at the plaza behind me. All of the storefronts completely shuttered up, boarded up. We did speak to a couple of residents out here who live on Hutchinson Island here in St. Lucie County, many of them making that very difficult decision to evacuate.
Scared that I'm not going to have a place to come back to. That's basically the main thing. I really am. I've never been so frightened.
Leaving the only thing that we own and losing it is the hardest part. I did take what is important that I don't want to lose, but it's difficult. It's very stressful. The whole week has been stressful.
Obviously a very difficult decision for many, but if you are in those mandatory evacuation zones, it is very important that you leave because it could get very dangerous where you live. Now, some of those shelters here in St. Lucie County will open up today, many of them opening up tomorrow. And then there, of course, is a 5 p.m. press conference in St. Lucie County at the Emergency Operations Center. That press conference at 5 o'clock this evening. Reporting live on Hutchinson Island, Alyssa Hyman, WPTV News Channel 5.
Alyssa, thank you. We want to get to Steve Weigel now. We were talking earlier about the latest track that had come out earlier, a few hours back, and Steve was kind of analyzing it and giving us a little more of his thoughts on the lean, the wobble, what do we want to call it?
Yeah, there's a little, you mean, well, now which one, Shannon? The track shift, there is a track shift that happened at 11 a.m. where it brought some of the tracks in more west by a few miles. So, you know, we're watching everything mile by mile now. So that was the new model tracks. And then there's a little shift with the Euro model this afternoon that also brings it a little farther west. And there's a little wobble going on right now as you'll notice the eye of this storm is just pushing a little toward the northwest. Now, the Hurricane Center doesn't jump on anything like this. They want to see like a 4 to 6 hour trend here before they see something go a little bit longer. But that's an interesting little jump there. And look at that satellite loop. That is really incredible. That even the high, thin cirrus clouds out ahead of the storm, some of those are already starting to work in around the Keys right now. But that's the real core of the hurricane. What's been happening in the last few days is that the strongest winds have been in the northern two quadrants, so the northeast quadrant and the northwestern quadrant. And the strongest winds are right along that eye wall right there, which is about 20 miles wide. But it may be going through, it appears to be going through an eye wall, what we call an eye wall replacement cycle. So the eye gets very, very small, and just the dynamics, the physics of it just can't support that small eye wall, and it breaks down and a new eye forms that's a little bit wider, and that becomes the new eye for the hurricane. It's been going through this for the last week, and actually Matthew did it as it approached Florida too. And when it is happening, the winds are a little bit weaker near the core, and that's something to watch as a storm gets closer, because it actually starts that process as it gets closer or very near us. The winds can be a little bit less as the storm moves through. And at this point, we'll take anything we can get as far as the winds dropping off a little bit. But there's a look at the current conditions with our storm, and of course that track coming in across South Florida on, well, here's the timeline right here. So the winds right now, 155, moving west at 14. And here's the forecast track, very close to the northern side of Cuba, and then a turn after that, Category 4 Saturday evening, and then coming in across around the Middle Keys. At this point, there's Key West, Key Largo up in this area. So that's 145 mile an hour winds, better than the 185 we were watching the other day as it went through the Virgin Islands, but definitely a powerful, very damaging hurricane. And then tracking up just west of just east of Fort Myers, western side of the lake, and then coming right up the state and weakening after that. And it weakens very quickly for a couple of reasons. It's undergoing wind shear. It's lost its energy source, which is the warm waters of the ocean, and that's what's really fueling this thing at this point. And that's why it's been able to keep a lot of its current strength, because the water is running in the high 80s in the Bahamas and through the Florida Straits, and those temperatures are ideal conditions to keep either this at the same intensity or maybe even a little bit stronger than it actually is. It is possible, it's unlikely, but it is possible for this to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane. At this point, it's very, very close. Keep in mind, it's 155 miles an hour. Those are the winds. We get up to 2 more miles an hour, and it's a Category 5 again. So we're very close to that. There's the official forecast right there, and the new model tracks have shifted. You can see the lake at this point, Lake Okeechobee. Remember yesterday? It was very difficult to see that, pretty much impossible. And then up the state after that. So we're watching those model runs very closely. And here are the chances for tropical storm force winds, and then through the weekend, above 90%. The probability of hurricane force winds across South Florida, at least in our area, range anywhere from about 30 to 35%. And those are, of course, critical numbers that we'll keep you up to date on too. Now, what about the times of arrival for our strong winds? It looks like Saturday late afternoon, the tropical storm force winds work into southern Palm Beach County and then just spread up through the area. The peak winds and rainfall for this hurricane and the potential for storm surge will be Sunday afternoon and evening. So today looks good. Some rain squalls, gusty winds. You can still get outside and do some final preparations. Tomorrow morning's not bad, but the afternoon goes downhill quickly. Tomorrow evening, we're developing those tropical storm force winds, so that's 39 miles an hour or stronger. Into Saturday night, still winds climbing, torrential rains. Sunday afternoon and evening, the peak winds and rain. And we were actually just talking, the storm team talking about how the timeline for this has been shifted back a little bit. The storm its arrival time here is a little bit slower, but probably about 2 to 4 hours. So that delays the advancing winds and rain a little bit. Yesterday when we were talking, it looked like Boca and Delray. We're looking at about 3 p.m. Saturday for those gusty winds. Now it looks more like 6 p.m., like early evening, late afternoon, early evening for the tropical storm force winds to develop. So we'll keep that's something that's going to change right up until the storm moves in. So we want to keep everyone up to date on how much more time you have to prepare and get things ready before it gets a little bit, you don't want to be on a ladder.